The beautiful part about it being so late is that if my brain don't work right the way it needs to kind of put these thoughts together, I could just scrub it before, and I've been going with my gut, and my gut is telling me to get this content out, and I'm gonna do it in the best way possible. We're gonna talk about the Joe Budden Podcast today and this ongoing situation with Melyssa Ford. And before I even start and get into it, I want to do it in a particular way because one, I feel like a lot of men try and cover these topics and do it in a real gossipy Perez Hilton way, and that's just not wavy and fly to me. You know, I think Danny from the Stop used to do a really good job of covering this podcast, and now you can tell that his focus is kind of wanting to shift to other places because like the shit just be lazy now. It just be clickbait titles and not really what the fuck is going on. I think my guy Elevation is doing a great job of it. I don't know too many other people that are doing it, but you got to do it right. And you got to do it in a respectful way if you choose to, or you could just go straight balls to the wall, but that's not what I'm here for. If you a fan of the Joe Budden Podcast, then you know that Melyssa Ford has been missing in action for what feels like weeks, but maybe almost like 2 weeks now. I guess since she walked off set on the Patreon when they were having the conversation about addiction and things like that. And my take or my space on it, since we don't have, the new episode just came out, and since we still don't have a real answer of where she is, what's happening, anything, I'm not going to do too much speculation. But what I will say is that, maybe sometimes people outgrow things, or you think you outgrew something. And that's the stance that I'm going to take here until we get a further answer. Maybe she felt like she outgrew the podcast, and now she's finding her own lane with her own podcast that she started, Hot and Bothered. And, I hope that if that's what she wants and that's what aligns correctly, that would be great for her. But I do have a take on, I think sometimes we try and outgrow things too quickly. Am I on here? Just making sure everything is on and going. Just give me 1 second. Make sure all of this is up. We are flowing. I know we is flowing, but I want to make sure we're going. I don't want to do all this for nothing. Alright, cool. Sometimes people may outgrow things too quickly, and you believe you outgrew something. And yeah, Melyssa Ford has had, this long career, started, we came to know her as a video vixen, and then she kind of transitioned out of that, and now we get to hear. And I know she did another podcast before with Jason Lee. That's one of the clips and everything that we've been seeing going around and everything. And her own kind of podcast, I think, before or after that. But as far as in this space, this is her introduction in this space and our reintroduction to who she is. And she said that, she want to be an actress and she want to do things in media. They call her like the attempt at being a black Barbara Walters. I don't think that's nice. But still, you can see that her podcast and the Joe Budden Podcast are drastically different. They're not the same things. They're not the same topics. They're not even the same presentation of her. Which, happens. Like, I remember when Joe first did, what was it? State of the Culture? When he first did State of the Culture, but more specifically when he first started doing interviews with other people. And the interviews with other people were a lot different than the podcast. Because you don't always want to present the same in certain places, but specifically for him, I think it was, I'm not going to give y'all my sauce that I'm giving over here just to make this lit. If y'all want to interview me, you don't get an interview with me. If y'all want me on the pod, go watch the pod. You like my old shit, go play my old shit. I think a lot of that had to do with it. But in this situation with her, she's so fresh and new, at least to the new eyes in this space. I think that trying to outgrow the podcast and just be like, all right, I'm gonna go in my own lane now, it may be too early and a detriment to it. Now, I think it's a lot different than when Rory and Mal left and they started their own thing. They had about almost 5-6 years of equity built in with the fans. The fans were a lot more interested in what would happen next. And yes, of course, there was a big side of, okay, we just want to see them fail. But you had certain things that were kind of built in that like people could know and tell without even it having to be a big topic. Even like when, Roy was going through the whole thing with his fiance and everything. And there were kind of slight mentions of it on the pod, but it's like you could kind of, just by spending so much time hearing him and watching him, that if you're a real listener, you can tell without things having to be overtly said. And that's what you get when you have a connection with these people that you've been listening to and watching 2 days a week for 4 or 5 years. I don't think with Melyssa Ford is that same situation. I don't even think it would be the same. I know it wouldn't be the same situation if Flip were to leave. Flip came in kind of in a different stance, space, and pretenses than Melyssa Ford. He had his own thing going before, and that was a big draw of why to bring him in. He came in as an amplification of what he was doing, helped to amplify the pod, and I don't think that he would just leave now anyways, just from his stance that I think we see on his stance with loyalty and the conversations that he mentions with his mom and things like that. But outside of that, that's completely different than if we are just new and fresh to you in this space, and now after a year or so be like, all right, I got what I needed, boom, I'm gone, I'm gonna start my own thing. I don't think that works like that, especially in this space where it's the Joe Budden Podcast. It's centered around him, and we all love the cast, but we have to spend time really getting to know the cast. I think that's what Rory did a really good job of, and that's what kind of helped them continue to kind of ascend afterwards, is he got like really open on the podcast. So when it came to them doing the new show, people felt like they really knew him because of the things that he shared. And that's the value that you create when you're on a platform for so long. If you haven't had that much time to really allow the fans into your world, then when you leave, yeah, they might care for a second, but really a lot of people are there and just caring to see you fail. You can liken that and bring that to the same situation like as Julian on the Rory and Mal podcast. At first people were tuned in because they wanted to hear the gossip. They wanted to hear the mess of what happened, why'd you get fired, what went down. But if there wasn't enough equity and time, and he shared on there too, he shared some stories and some things, but if there just wasn't enough time to really get people connected all the way through and through with you, then it may be a grave mistake. And sure, Melyssa's beautiful, and she's been part of this culture for a long time, but you learn a very different lesson when you go out and jump off the porch in your own way. And I'm speaking from not any of the stances of all the things that we're hearing online about, well, maybe it has something to do with Mark, or maybe it has something to do with Imani, or maybe all of it and all that. I don't think that has anything to do with it, because specifically because of Joe. He's not the same podcaster in person, but most importantly, the same businessman that he was 10 years ago when he started this podcast. Sure, there's been a lot of bumps along the way, but I think he's learned from every bump. Even further to like the last situation with the what was it, sleepwalking situation. We didn't hear about that on the podcast or really in the public until it was about over and finished. As opposed to like the situation before that, with Olivia Dope when he was making the network and everything, and that whole situation occurred, and we kind of heard about it afterwards after everything had dissolved. But I think all of those things along the road allowed him to learn and to kind of circumvent himself for this situation. That's why I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that any of this has to do with a possible lawsuit coming or anything that Mandy and everybody else is saying online. Because I think that he has protected himself for that. And it's kind of like the same thing that they say about like the Shannon Sharp situation and everything. I know people up there know he's getting money. They see him a lot more than us just online and the consumers do. But I think that $20 million article has something to do with it in the sense that now the public knows your value a little more, and now the public can maybe start to teeter into people's ears and their ways and what you think that someone else should be getting and all of that. But once again, I think you don't get to that $20 million plus mark over the span of 10 years of growing something and all these bumps and hurdles along the way of the Olivia Dope and Rory and Mal leaving and Bridget and Mandy leaving and all these things. You don't attain that and sustain that without learning some things and learning to kind of to circumvent yourself, to keep yourself safe in these situations. And that's why I don't think any of these rumors of lawsuits or anything have really much validity at all. Because I don't think that the current version that we have of Joe Budden in this podcast would, from a business structure, allow someone to be able to just come in, get hot, leave, and go somewhere else. I don't think that's happening no more. That's happened already. And fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. I don't think that that's just going to keep being a repeated cycle. Especially if you're a listener like I am that's listened to him for a long time and really picked up the gems along the way. He's learned something. Still to the same fact that, I think there could be something in there like how he mentions like with, oh shoot, Mandy doing something lit or something new, I need to get my piece. I think there may be some truth to things like that, and that may be part of what the deal was for C. The thing is leaving because you learn. I'm not just going to let you come over here to this big, huge platform and just go somewhere else and make more with it. No. And I also think you learn that because the most important reason I think he learned that is because he's independent. You start to have all these issues and everything, and things come when you start to ascend to a certain level that they didn't think you would ascend past. But most importantly, when you're essentially doing it on your own, making moves that big networks get to make. And when you get higher up, they don't want just the single black guy or whoever may own a piece with him or not to be the one that's now neck and neck with these huge million and billion dollar corporations, because now it's 20 million one year, but then it's 100 million, and before you know it, now you're really neck and neck with the billion dollar corporations because you have a $1 billion corporation on your own. That's not what we want. That's not what they want. That's how you probably get situations of, and I'm kind of going off here, but that's how you probably get situations of the Shannon Sharp thing, and kind of a little lesser thing, and I probably shouldn't even say this, but the whole Tory Lanez situation or anything. It's like when you start to come too close, things start to come. So that's also why I don't think that this will be the last time that a situation like this happens for him, because I think he will remain independent. And while you're independent going up, they're going to throw more and more shit at you. Whether it's the corporation doing it or the people that's involved that are coming along the way, they're going to be one big mixing pot, and this shit just going to keep happening. The difference with a corporation is that they can maybe quiet it a little bit easier. But when it's a big cultural and public platform, and especially when it's a situation like a co-host that hasn't been there for weeks and no mention of it, yeah, it's going to be kind of loud. But back to my point of what I believe that maybe she may feel like she outgrew the podcast. I think it may be too early for that. Like, it's not even the same thing for like if Mark were to leave. He came over to the podcast and it kind of not introduced him to more people that may not have known about him, but it made people listen to him that already knew about him, but that just wasn't in their sphere of what they were tuned into and listening to. Now, like, I already knew the name Mark Lamont Hill, but I wasn't watching those CNN and everything. My dad was watching that shit. But now it's like he comes over to here and he shows a different side of him. And now if he were to leave, that's a lot different because he's not starting his kind of career here. Had a career, so like the same thing I said with Flip. He had something before, and now this is a stop where it amplified. It wasn't a start, and now we're going. And I think that's where people kind of get confused sometimes. They're like, oh shit, I'm lit. All right, cool. I can go to the next thing. No. You still got a lot of work to do here. And I just think that people miss that sometimes. I just don't think that any of the... Let me sip my tea to avoid the tea. I don't think much of the gossipy things have anything to do with it. But we'll see. I mean, eventually, probably soon, then the next month, we will get an answer. And as we go along that journey, I may be here from time to time to talk about it. So, that's my episode tonight. Y'all drop in the comments and let me know what you think of why you think the real reason that Melyssa Ford is gone, and maybe I'll come on and talk about it. Or if it's a little too chatty patty, I ain't touching it. Y'all have a good night. Let me know what you think in the comments. Alright, it's Stro Styles. It's the Stro Show Live.